A man walks into a restaurant wearing a $10,000 watch. Nobody notices, at least not consciously. But by the end of the evening, three people have quietly changed the way they see him. One assumes he's successful. Another assumes he's wealthy. The third assumes he's trying to prove something. What's interesting is that only one of those assumptions might be true. And according to Warren Buffett, the person who is actually building lasting wealth often gives away the fewest clues. Not because they're secretive, because they understand something most people don't. The moment wealth becomes visible, it starts attracting attention. Attention attracts expectations. Expectations attract pressure. And pressure has a strange habit of making people poorer. Today, we're looking at 5 wealth habits Warren Buffett has practiced for decades that most people completely misunderstand. Not investment strategies, not stock tips, not complicated financial formulas, habits, simple behaviors that quietly protect wealth while everyone else is busy displaying it. Because one of the biggest ironies in personal finance is that the people most obsessed with looking wealthy often have the least freedom. And the people with the most freedom often look surprisingly ordinary. The difference becomes obvious once you see what's happening beneath the surface, especially today. Because we live in an era where showing success has never been easier. A single photo can create the illusion of wealth. A leased luxury car can look identical to an owned one. A financed lifestyle can look identical to financial independence. And social media has made this confusion permanent. Every day, millions of people compare their financial reality to someone else's highlight reel. The result is predictable: more spending, more pressure, more debt, and less actual wealth. Which brings us to the first habit Buffett has quietly followed for most of his life. Keeping your lifestyle changes private. This sounds almost boring, until you realize how expensive the alternative becomes. Imagine 2 people receive the same promotion. Both start earning an extra $20,000 per year. The first person immediately upgrades everything. Better apartment, better car, more expensive vacations, nicer restaurants. Within months, their entire lifestyle expands to consume the new income. The second person makes almost no visible changes. Friends barely notice anything different. But behind the scenes, something powerful is happening. The extra income isn't being consumed. It's being converted into ownership, stocks, businesses, assets, future cash flow. 10 years later, the gap between them becomes enormous. Not because one earned dramatically more, because one quietly redirected attention away from consumption. This is where most people misunderstand wealth. They think wealth is what you buy. But wealth is actually what you keep. The house is visible. The investment account isn't. The luxury SUV is visible. The ownership stake in a company isn't. The expensive vacation is visible. The compounding assets quietly growing for 20 years aren't. This creates a strange psychological trap. Humans naturally want recognition. If you work hard and earn more money, part of you wants evidence. Something people can see. Something that confirms the effort was worth it. But Buffett has spent decades doing almost the opposite. He still lives in the same Omaha house he purchased in 1958. Not because he can't afford more. Because he understands a principle most people eventually learn the hard way. Every visible upgrade creates invisible obligations. A larger house creates larger maintenance costs. A luxury vehicle creates luxury-level expenses. An expensive lifestyle creates expensive expectations. And expectations are remarkably difficult to downgrade. That's why lifestyle inflation is so dangerous. Nobody plans to become trapped by their own success. It happens gradually, one upgrade at a time, until suddenly your high income is supporting a high-cost life rather than creating wealth. And that's where the second private habit becomes important. Keeping your investments boring. This sounds almost offensive in modern finance, because financial media has convinced people investing should feel exciting. Every week there's a new opportunity, a new trend, a new prediction, a new millionaire story, a new thing everyone supposedly missed. The problem is that excitement and investing rarely work well together. Imagine someone tells you they doubled their money in 3 months. It's a great story. It grabs attention immediately. What they rarely tell you is how many times they lost money before that happened, or how much risk was involved, or how often the strategy eventually stopped working. Buffett has built one of the largest fortunes in human history through an approach that would be considered painfully boring by internet standards. Long holding periods, profitable businesses, patience, repetition, the financial equivalent of watching paint dry. And yet that boring process produced results most people spend their lives chasing. Why? Because wealth doesn't usually come from dramatic moments. It comes from ordinary decisions repeated consistently for decades, which is deeply unsatisfying to hear. People want a shortcut. Compounding offers a process. People want excitement. Compounding offers patience. People want a breakthrough. Compounding offers time. And time is exactly what most people are unwilling to give. That's why the loudest investors often attract the most attention while the quietest investors frequently accumulate the most wealth. One group is performing, the other is building. Those are not always the same thing. And the distinction becomes even more important when we reach Buffett's third habit. A habit that may be the most difficult one in the modern world. Keeping your financial goals private, not completely secret, just protected. Because the moment a goal becomes public, something interesting happens. People begin reacting to it. Some encourage it. Some question it. Some unintentionally pressure you to change it. Others start comparing their own lives to yours. And suddenly your financial decisions aren't entirely your own anymore. They become social decisions. That's when wealth building starts getting complicated. Not because the math changed, because the psychology changed. And psychology is where most financial battles are actually won or lost. Think about what happens when someone publicly announces a major financial goal. Maybe they want to retire early. Maybe they want to buy rental properties. Maybe they want to save half their income. Maybe they simply want to stop spending so much money. At first, the reactions seem harmless. Friends laugh, family members offer opinions, coworkers make jokes, people start asking questions. Then something subtle begins happening. Every financial decision starts getting filtered through other people's expectations. If you skip an expensive vacation, somebody notices. If you keep driving an older car, somebody comments. If you refuse to upgrade your lifestyle, somebody asks why. The goal slowly stops belonging entirely to you. Now you're managing perceptions, and perception management is expensive. This is one of the least discussed costs in personal finance. Not monetary cost, psychological cost. Humans are social creatures. We naturally seek approval. We naturally avoid criticism. Which means financial decisions rarely occur in isolation. They're influenced by families, friends, coworkers, neighbors, entire cultures, sometimes without us even realizing it. Buffett has repeatedly emphasized independent thinking throughout his career. Not because he enjoys being different, because markets reward independent thinking, and so does personal finance. If everyone around you believes spending equals success, building wealth becomes harder. If everyone around you upgrades, every time income increases, maintaining discipline becomes harder. If everyone around you treats investing like entertainment, patience becomes harder. This is why keeping goals somewhat private can be incredibly powerful. Not secretive, protected, like a seed growing underground before anyone sees the tree. Because once the goal becomes strong enough, outside opinions matter less. But during the early stages, they matter a lot. And that's where a surprising amount of wealth quietly disappears. Not through bad investments, through social pressure. Let's put some numbers on that. Imagine someone earns an extra $1,000 every month. Not life-changing money, just a modest income increase. If they invest that $1,000 monthly and earn an average long-term market return, the results become significant. Not after 1 year, not after 3 years, but after 20 years, the difference can reach hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially much more. Now imagine that same $1,000 gets redirected elsewhere. A slightly nicer apartment, a slightly more expensive vehicle, a few more luxury purchases each month. The spending feels small, the long-term consequences become enormous. This is the uncomfortable math most people never calculate, because the real cost of spending isn't the price tag. It's the future value of the money that no longer exists. A $1,000 purchase isn't just a $1,000 purchase. It may also be 20 years of lost compounding. That's a completely different number. And once you see it that way, status spending starts looking very different, which leads directly into Buffett's fourth private habit, keeping your successes quiet. This one sounds strange. After all, aren't achievements meant to be celebrated? Of course. But Buffett understands a principle that applies far beyond investing. The louder success becomes, the harder it becomes to think clearly. Success attracts attention. Attention attracts praise. Praise can create overconfidence. And overconfidence is one of the most expensive emotions in finance. History is filled with examples. Investors who made one great decision. Business owners who experienced one great year. Traders who got lucky during one strong market cycle. Then they started believing the success was entirely skill. Risk increased. Humility disappeared. Discipline weakened. Eventually reality arrived. Markets have a remarkable ability to punish arrogance. Buffett knows this, which is why his public image has always been surprisingly understated relative to his actual wealth. There are billionaires whose lifestyles generate more headlines than Buffett, yet few people have accumulated wealth more effectively. That's not an accident. It's a strategy, because staying grounded helps preserve judgment, and judgment is far more valuable than attention. Think about how modern culture rewards visibility. The biggest house gets noticed, the newest luxury car gets noticed, the expensive vacation gets noticed, the social media announcement gets noticed. Quiet consistency rarely gets noticed. Yet quiet consistency is responsible for an enormous percentage of long-term wealth creation. It's almost funny when you think about it. The behaviors most likely to generate attention often reduce wealth. The behaviors most likely to build wealth often generate very little attention. It's an inversion most people never fully recognize, and that's why Buffett's final habit might be the most important one. Keeping your net worth private. Not because wealth should be hidden, because wealth changes human behavior, sometimes in ways that are difficult to predict. Imagine two identical conversations. In the first, nobody knows your financial situation. In the second, everyone knows you're worth several $1,000,000. The conversation immediately changes. Requests change. Assumptions change. Expectations change. Relationships sometimes change, not always, but often enough to matter. Money is emotionally charged. People project onto it. Some admire it. Some resent it. Some become dependent on it. Some become intimidated by it. And all of those reactions create friction. Buffett has spent decades understanding incentives, how people behave, why they behave that way, what changes decision-making, what distorts judgment. Net worth information changes incentives, which means sharing it casually often creates unnecessary complications. This doesn't mean living like a secret agent. It means understanding that privacy can be a form of financial protection. Not just protection from scammers or bad actors, protection from expectations, protection from social pressure, protection from the subtle forces that influence behavior. Because wealth is easiest to manage when it remains a tool. The moment it becomes part of your identity, problems begin appearing. That's another lesson Buffett has quietly demonstrated throughout his life. He doesn't seem particularly interested in performing wealth. He's interested in owning productive assets. Those are very different objectives. One seeks validation, the other seeks results. And this distinction reveals something uncomfortable about modern personal finance. Most financial mistakes don't originate from ignorance. People generally know they should save more, invest consistently, avoid unnecessary debt, spend less than they earn. The information isn't hidden. The challenge is social, emotional, psychological. People don't struggle because the rules are complicated. They struggle because the rules often conflict with human nature. Human nature wants recognition now. Wealth building rewards delayed gratification. Human nature wants belonging. Wealth building sometimes requires independence. Human nature wants visible rewards. Wealth building often creates invisible progress. That's why Buffett's habits appear almost boring on the surface. They're not designed to impress people. They're designed to survive reality. And reality is where financial plans either succeed or fail. The irony is that Buffett's greatest lesson may have nothing to do with stocks at all. It may be about attention, where you direct it, why you seek it, how much you're willing to spend for it, because every luxury purchase, every lifestyle upgrade, every public display of success carries an invisible question. Are you buying value or are you buying validation? The difference isn't always obvious in the moment. 20 years later, it usually is. And perhaps that's the most interesting part of all. The world constantly encourages people to make wealth visible, bigger, louder, more obvious, more impressive. Yet some of the most financially successful people in history have quietly moved in the opposite direction. Less display, less noise, less need for approval, more ownership, more patience, more freedom. Which leaves us with a question Buffett's life seems to ask over and over again. If nobody could see your success, if nobody could like it, comment on it, or admire it, would you still make the same financial decisions? Because your answer to that question might reveal whether you're building wealth or simply performing it.